everybody, welcome to this video on how to connect your FizzWizz to a bright tank and set it up and start carbonating. So we're going to take a quick look at the connections and see how quickly it is to connect it up. 3 different carbonation modes that you can set, and then we're actually going to set it up, work out the flow rate that we have to flow the carbonation stone at and start carbonating before we summarise how to set the FizzWizz up for head transfer mode. We're going to take a look at the recommended fittings for the FizzWizz, and we may recommend these fittings for a number of reasons. The first one would be that maybe we don't have a sample port, so we can't use the alternative fitting solution. It may be that your carbonation stones are not very good quality, or you want to upgrade your carbonation stones. Or it could also be that you want to improve your carbonation times. So that would be by upgrading and having a ceramic 16-inch diffuser that would speed up the carbonation time in a lot of processes. We're just going to talk about that install. So the FizzWizz comes with this isolation valve that sits on the CIP arm, and has one of these industrial push-to-connects on. The stone comes pre-prepared with the check valve already installed in the isolation valve. So you've probably seen in the previous videos that we supply these for you to modify your carb stones, but in this situation we've already done all the epoxy welding and made sure done all the leak testing and all the preparation, so that it's basically ready to go straight into your tank. So the industrial fitting here is where we mount the arm separator, and the arm separator is required to catch the condensation or any beer overflow or foaming that may gather in the CIP arm. We don't want that going into the FizzWizz, so we have this separator with this sight glass, so you can see if there is product or fluid in this sight glass, and then the user can undo the Swiffer valve and vent it straight onto the floor. And the nice thing about these Dixon connections is that they click in place, and once that click has happened, it's a guaranteed low pressure seal, and that means that your tank will stay nice and tight and not have any leaks. So the Whistone combo has a dedicated built-in thermal well as part of the carrier, and it also has this nice long extension, which is important because sometimes tanks have to be modified with a reducer to get the carbonation stone in. So this tank actually is like that, it has this reducer. So we need to get that carbonation stone past the reducer and past the glycol wall, okay? And then when we install this, we have to make sure that we install it nice and straight, and that we don't lever it up and down and scratch or damage the carbonation stone. So this simply just slides in to the tank, and then we'd obviously apply a tri-clamp fitting, and then underneath this assembly, just here, is where the FizzWizz temperature sensor will be installed. Alright, so let's start with connections. So with our connection kits, we use these lovely Dixon Sanitary Eclectic nets, and we supply with all the hoses required to connect it up. So first thing that we're going to do is we're going to seek out the arm separator, and this arm separator is super important because we don't want any condensation or liquid that has got into the CIP arm to get into the FizzWizz, and that's what this is for. And so before we connect it up, we should just quickly open it up, and if there's any fluid in the arm, that will fall onto the floor, and then we can connect the arm separator up. Then we're going to connect the arm separator up to the arm fitting on the FizzWizz, and it's easy to identify because it's got a picture of the arm separator on it. So we have the arm hose. So the next connection is the stone hose. And the stone hose consists of one of these Dixon Eclectic connects, and also it's got a mechanical check valve, and so that means that the stone hose actually has two check valves in it, because you also have the zero crack pressure check valve in the stone modification kit, and that simply clips onto the top of the carb stone, and obviously there's a sign there on the FizzWizz that says Carbonation, and this is a 5/16 diameter hose that just pushes into this pneumatic push connect. So we need to find a CO2 supply, and that's down here, and the regulator that's feeding this CO2 supply needs to be set to somewhere between 30 and 40 pounds per square inch. Alright, and so the other thing that we need is a temperature sensor here. And previous videos you would have seen that there's loads of ways to get a temperature out of a bright tank. In this particular bright tank they're using one of our stone combos. The temperature sensor slides in the bottom of the stone combo. Alright, so that's all the settings, that's all the hoses. It's totally possible to just shorten these hoses if they're too long. But we're not going to do that in this demonstration. Okay, so now the FizzWizz, we turn the FizzWizz on, and the first question you get asked is, do you want to start a new batch, yes or no? So if you have the cloud services activated, you would say yes at this point. The next question you get asked is your start temperature. So this is the start threshold temperature that the FizzWizz will start carbonating at. So for beers that get cold crash before they're transferred, the temperature when the product hits the tank is usually under 3.5 degrees Celsius anyway. But if you are like a salsa maker or a kombucha maker, then those products don't get chilled until they get into the bright tank. So if your tank is sitting at 10 degrees, you might want to raise the start temperature so that you can start maybe a telescope cycle or something like that. But in this stage, we don't need to adjust this, we're just going to leave it at 3.5 degrees. This little flashing backwards and forwards that the lights do indicate that the FizzWizz has spoken to the cloud and has got a confirmation back, and it's started a new batch for recording the data for quality control and historical requirements. So the next thing we're going to do is select carbonation mode, and then we're going to decide how fizzy we want our beverage. So I happen to know that the client wants this tank carbonated to 2.7 volumes. So I'm not going to change this. And the next thing you're going to get asked is the carbonation type. So the standard carbonation type used for most products is normal. And what normal means is that the bright tank starts at 0 psi. So there's no pressure on this tank at the moment, just like the smallest amount of head pressure, but practically 0 psi. And what will happen is that the FizzWizz will measure the temperature of the tank and then calculate what the equilibrium pressure is based on the 2.7 volumes. So that's the normal carbonation type. And that is what we're going to do with this tank. There are two other options, and we'll go into more detail about that in another video. But there is a pre-scrub option and the ability to remove oxygen from your beverage. And there is also what's called the top-up function, and that is for people who use spunding or who are doing inline carbonation into a bright tank and then need to just slightly adjust the carbonation after inline. But this client's doing good old normal, so I'm going to hit OK to that, and it's now going to check a bunch of stuff like the input pressure and the temperature, and now it's going to ask me, do I want to set the carbonation stone flow rate? And I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to press enter. So now what will happen is the FizzWizz will turn the gas on for about a minute, and at this time you can figure out how much gas we want to get flowing into the FizzWizz. So if I turn this knob up, you'll see this ball goes up, but obviously that's going to drop down because I don't have the carbonation stone open. So I'm going to open up the carbonation stone, and I happen to know that we need to flow this carbonation stone in this tank at around 7 cubic feet per hour. But I'm going to show you how to actually calculate your carbonation stone flow rate using our app. Great, we now know how to flow this carbonation stone to make sure that it doesn't go hydrophobic by using the brewer's app, and I can set this carbonation stone to this tank to the appropriate level. Now this number here is going to count down all the way to 0, or I can bypass it by hitting the enter button, and now it will start the carbonation process, and we can now leave this to carbonate. So what we're going to imagine now is that we've come in the morning and this product is now nicely carbonated and we want to get ready for packaging. Okay, so the first thing we do is we hold the blue button in until the product comes out of carbonation mode, and we'll say no to new batch, and we're happy with the start temperature. And now, instead of selecting carbonation mode, we'll go to head pressure mode. And now this will give us the option now to select what the head pressure on the tank is going to be kept at. And we have two ways of measuring the pressure in the tank for packaging. So the kind of default way, the standard way, is to use this same setup and use the pressure transducer that is connected to the arm and turning in the FizzWizz to hold the head pressure at the required pressure as called for by the canning line, which is usually around 15 psi. So that works fine with like these smaller tanks. So any tank that's like kind of under 30 barrels, that works extremely well. And essentially, one of the things to think about is the height of the beer and the weight of the beer that is actually pushing down and coming out of the bottom of the bright tank. So if we start to get tall tanks, then we can start to gather quite a lot of hydrostatic pressure at the bottom of the tank. So what happens is if you're only monitoring the head pressure, then as the weight of the beer comes off the bottom of the tank, the head pressure might stay at 15 psi, but the bottom tank pressure might have started at 17 and then dropped down to 15, okay? So what you would typically do is if you were running a canning line at that point, or a bottling line, you just open the throttle up a little bit as you go, or you can come along to the FizzWizz and on the fly you can increase the pressure you know, as you go to keep that pressure nice and stable. Or we can use our foot transducer. So this is our foot transducer. What happens is this is installed on a T-section right at the bottom of the tank here. And the FizzWizz has an auto-detect system. So what happens is that you simply take the temperature sensor out and plug in the foot pressure transducer, and you would install that at the bottom of the tank. And now the FizzWizz will maintain the pressure at the bottom of the tank, and that way you're always feeding the absolute same pressure to your bright tank all the way through the packaging, all the way through the packaging.